Yo, what is up guys, Fer here, and today we're going to be talking about Luffy's first step into awakening, because eventually Luffy is going to need awakening to defeat all these monsters in the new world, the Yonkos, the Admirals, and individuals that are on that level. And since Wano's in sight, this could be the first time we see a glimpse into Luffy's awakening. But before we get into this video, subscribe if you're new here, like the video if you want to see more content like this. But let's get on to the video. Now, I feel like awakening is something gradual, something you learn over time. When it comes to awakening your fruit, I feel like having a devil fruit for a very long time gives the user an easier access to awakening. I feel like this should be the advantage for people that have eaten their fruit at a very young age. And when you think about it, we know that there are souls that are stored in devil fruits, and so if you've had the fruit for a longer duration of time, I feel like the soul would be more connected to that user, in return having more compatibility with the user. And with Luffy, we know that Luffy he ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi at a very young age. I think when he was 7 years old or 8 years old, if I recall, during when he met Shanks. Luffy could be very close to being awakened, but doesn't necessarily know what is required to enter the stage of awakening. I also feel like people that have fruits that goes well with their personality are more likely to be awakened. Again, I think this goes back to the compatibility aspects that the fruit has with the user. For example, individuals like Doflamingo, we know long before having a fruit, Doflamingo was extremely manipulative because he was a celestial dragon and felt like he was above everyone. And this was emphasized later in the story to the point that he wanted Rocinante to sacrifice himself for his cause. And Doflamingo, being the manipulative individual that he is, obtained a fruit that goes well with his personality. Having the will to manipulate and having the string fruit is a match made in heaven. And so I feel like the compatibility might be important here. And I don't think awakening is this end all be all thing, whereas all you need to do is train your fruit to perfection to achieve it. There has to be more, something specifically related to the soul within the fruit. And when you look at the term awakening, the way I took it is that you're awakening something that was dormant, and perhaps that is the soul within the fruit. And the way Doflamingo talked about it made me think that there's several elements or requirements needed to awaken a devil fruit. And it was also stated to be rare by Doflamingo. It might be the same thing like King's Haki, whereas some people cannot achieve awakening even if they try to. It might be a skill given to a select number of individuals, because I don't think everyone who has a devil fruit has the potential of awakening. Now, before I talk about Luffy's awakening, I do want to mention that I feel like people are of the mindset that awakening is very straightforward. But apart from the thing I mentioned before, I feel like the other element that might be incorporated into awakening is possessions or something of that sort. I feel like there's going to be a downside to become awakened. There has to be some risk involved here. As I mentioned before, we know that there's spirits that inhabit devil fruits that in return grant a person an ability, whether it's fire, lightning, ice, or rubber, which comes with a side effect that the user will not have the ability to swim anymore. Now, it doesn't really feel like a bad side effect when you think about it, but given that the One Piece world is made up of like 80% water and there's barely any large land masses, this is a big problem, especially for pirates and marine alike, given the fact that they roam the seas on a daily basis. But at a base level, this is a side effect for all devil fruit users right now. But when it comes to awakening, I think there's going to be changes, and this goes with the fact that awakening takes you to the next level, which gives you an ability to do more with your devil fruit. And since you can do more with your devil fruit, there should be new drawbacks that comes with it. That goes with the saying that great power comes with great responsibility, and I made a whole video talking about what it might be, but essentially what I said is that it could be based on the idea of possessions, where the soul could actually take control of your body. And I think this is what is going on with the guards of, you know, the guards of Impel Down. They achieved awakening but aren't exactly the same anymore. People tend to forget that these guys are actually humans, but for some reasons can't go back to their human form, and they don't have the ability of speech either. So I think there's going to be a downside to becoming awakened, and when I say downside, like some sort of trial you have to take, and if you fail those trials, you may go into a state similar to those of the jail guards, whereas you lose control of yourself. Think of it like Naruto and his 9 tails, and what Naruto had to do to have complete control over the 9 tails. I think it might be something of that sort. And given the fact that we got introduced to awakening fairly recently with Doflamingo, and we also saw it with Katakuri, I feel like Oda shouldn't spend too much time away from it, and he should give us a glimpse of how to reach that level. Now, when it comes down to Luffy becoming awakened, I feel like one way Oda could go about this is Luffy going into a rage mode that would manifest his awakening and show a glimpse of what it's capable of. I feel like we haven't had the moment with Luffy whereas he goes berserk berserk and actually wrecks everyone when one of his crewmates gets hurt, something similar to how Luffy dealt with Blue No, but this person would be maybe on that commander level. If anything, I feel like Jack may be that person, and Luffy did state that he does want to be Jack, so I think one of the Straw Hats will get hurt really bad in Wano, and then Luffy goes into this rage of awakening, and from then on Oda can expand on Luffy becoming more adept with his awakening. We need something more gradual that shows that Luffy is actually learning little by little, instead of just showing it out of the blue with no hints beforehand. It's really a cop-out when that happens sometimes, and it's very common and shown in manga for the protagonist to experience a traumatic event that would lead him to awakening a new ability. We've seen this time and time again with other shows like Bleach, Naruto, and this is going to be so good for Luffy because we've had problems with his base form. Like going into the new world, Luffy has always had to rely on Gear 4 to fight really strong individuals, and base form so far was completely useless against these guys. But with awakening, this is going to change because this would affect the overall structure of his devil fruit. So everything he's developed up until this point would be enhanced, which in return would make base form Gear 2 not as useless, and things like Gear 4 would show a massive boost in power, and with this, future gears can be created. Gear 5 is something a lot of people think would be, on the level of the top tier. So this form could allow Luffy to be on equal terms or equal grounds with a Yonko or an Admiral. Now, before I talk about what Luffy's awakening has the potential of doing, I do want to point out that I feel like Luffy's awakening isn't something that is going to be overpowered, but can be overpowered with a bit of versatility and creativity. And knowing Luffy, we know that is his thing, and this is shown with Gear 2 and Gear 4. So I feel like Oda is pushing creativity and versatility instead of raw power for Luffy, which is one of the best things about how Oda handles some fruits in One Piece. Now, for Luffy's awakening, I think we all have the assumption that it's going to be a lot different from Doflamingo and Katakuri. It's obvious that not all awakenings are going to be the same because not all fruits work the same way at a base level. And I think Oda has done a good job of showing the difference here, because devil fruits that work the same way more than likely will have the same awakening. Not always, but more likely. For example, both Katakuri and Doflamingo are producers, and so their awakening allows them to turn their surroundings into string and mochi respectively. Now, in Luffy's case, he's obviously not a producer but a physical enhancer, whereas his body has taken the properties of his devil fruit. So I feel like Luffy's awakening would allow him to add the properties of rubber into anything, not turning objects into rubber but adding the properties of rubber. For example, Luffy adds in the properties of rubber into a rock. The rock is still going to be hard, but it's also going to be elastic at the same time. And spoiler alert, because I will be talking about Boku no Hero, but basically there's a character in Boku no Hero that has the ability to bestow elasticity to anything, and that includes air itself. Now, why this is different from changing something into rubber like a lot of people theorize about is that the key word here is adding, not changing. So basically, Luffy's awakening would give iron the properties of rubber, but the iron would also retain its own characteristics. So the iron is still going to be hard, but it's going to be elastic as well. So in a sense, Luffy is making a new form of material that doesn't exist. For example, let's say Luffy wants to get to a higher ground. All he has to do is give elasticity to the floor, and he basically has a trampoline. He can also make air barriers that can reflect projectiles back at twice the power. The potential for this ability would be insane, and I think it's a perfect fit for someone like Luffy because, given his goofy nature. I also feel like Luffy would incorporate awakening into Gear 5 as well, and this would be amazing if we got a glimpse of this in Wano. But that's pretty much it for the video, guys. How do you guys feel about Luffy's awakening, and is there a possibility that we might see it in Wano if Luffy does go against one of the calamities or even Kaido? So comment down below what you guys think. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe for more One Piece content. Hit the notification bell if you want to get notified for future content. It is Pharaoh, and I will see you folks later. Peace.